Okay, what's going on, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of Energized. Russ, introduce the guest, man.
We have two of MMA's elite journalism talent here. We have from MMA Ireland is Mr. Donna Corby. Donna, big fan of the show, aren't you?
Oh man, there's no bigger fan of the show than me. Apparently, I big leagued you when you asked me to come on, but what I was actually doing was trying to play it cool because I've been waiting for so long to finally get offered to come on the show. But I'm here now, and it is such an honor to be here with all three of you.
I'm with the mic working.
Finally, my mic is working. Yeah.
And then on I don't know whether it's going to be on his right or left hand side, we have from the Ultimate MMA podcast, Mr. Jake Jones. Jake Jones, how you doing? That's a great name, by the way.
Thank you very much. You know what? When I was young, I used to hate it because Jake is not an old man's name. It's very much a young man's name. But now I'm getting into it because I'm getting my name out in the sport. It's got a little ring to it, so I'm enjoying it. But I'm doing very well. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for having me. How are you guys?
And my brother's name's Jake, so I already like you slightly more than Donna already.
And my favorite YouTuber's name is Jake.
Oh wow!
But obviously, you're talking about Jake Paul, no?
Of course, yeah, the greatest.
Oh, I can't wait for the show. For the people that aren't aware of Donna and Jake's work, like we met the two lads when we were at Bellator Dublin. Two lads absolutely grinding. If I'm going to put their links down in the bio or else in the top comments, so go down and check it out. Make sure to subscribe because the lads are grinding like fuck. But lads, for the people that are new to the show, so for the people that don't know yous or me, I just want you to tell me what you enjoy most about MMA, and then who's your favorite ever guest on your podcast. So we may as well start with Donna.
Yeah, so I'm absolutely the most casual of casuals, man. I started when Conor McGregor fought Chad Mendes, dude. That's like the most casual that you can be. But yeah, I got really into it around when actually the first one I stayed up for was the Dennis Seaver fight. So it was, basically Conor got me into MMA, and ever since I just fell in love with the sport, and I started covering it about a year or two later, and then I got my job at the Irish Daily Mirror, and there was a whole lot more coverage then. So yeah, I love everything about fighting. I love the atmosphere at the events. I love the sport. I think it's just such a fascinating sport. It's like it's such high stakes. It's the most interesting sport in the world. And in terms of my favorite person I've ever had on any of my different things, I would have to say the great Chael Sonnen is number one.
Ross is freak there. Jake, what about yourself, man?
Yeah, just how can you not love this sport? It's genuinely one of the things. Like, obviously, everyone growing up was into football and everything like that. I liked my football, I liked my rugby, but then when I started watching MMA, I was like, this is the sport for me. This is the best sport in the world. It was actually my brother used to get me into it when I was young. He's telling me about like Chuck Liddell, Rashad Evans, and that. And I remember when Chuck Liddell got knocked out by Rashad, I started crying. And I was going, why am I crying? What's it? So obviously there I was like, do you know what, this is my passion. And then a couple of years back, I started to basically just every single weekend watching the sport. So then last year I started taking my Masters in Sports Journalism and specifically just straight into MMA there. Hardly any focus on any other sport, just MMA. And then from there I've got my podcast now. I was working with Woe TV. I just basically love what I'm doing. And then last year when the lockdown kind of first began, it's crazy to think it's nearly a year now.
Yeah.
I started running like an MMA show.
Wow.
And we used to put a little quiz on that. I used to love doing that. So having some of the stars on there. Leah McCourt came on it, and she was brilliant. She absolutely smashed the quiz, but then would get involved with other fighters. So I'd say she was probably one of my favourite interviews, just because she would get involved with it, push it out there, start bantering Ian, Gary, and Reece McKee and that. But also, I managed to secure Chris Cyborg, and I remember I said at the time I'd hardly been in the game long at all. So when I got accepted by Chris, I was like, okay, this is big. So I loved that interview as well.
Yeah, no, that was a good one with Chris Cyborg as well. Ross, what about you, man? Can't wait to talk there. Like,
I know. I suppose I've always loved MMA. Like, people are always like, when was your like sort of first event? And I don't always remember, because sometimes I was like, but I remember watching UFC 100 from start to finish. But then like I remember watching, I think it was UFC 94 when Machida fought Rashad Evans, and then like you keep on going back and back. I'm like, I remember watching that fight as well, but like I can never actually remember what was the first one I watched or which chronicle order I actually watched them in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then like I suppose my highlight in MMA has been, announced on stage in New York by Bruce Buffer. Like, it doesn't actually get much better than that. I don't know if you guys have seen that, have you?
How could I not? You post it every 2 seconds.
Yeah, but
How could anyone possibly avoid that clip?
Yeah, you're right. Don't be a hater. Don't be a hater. And then
I'm just jealous.
Favorite interview of all time. I suppose it has to be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in person down in Cork. Like, when we tell people that story, it almost sounds like a lie. Like, why was Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in Cork, and how did we get to the field?
Yeah, that was one of your best ones. I liked the Kiefer Crosby one from that day the most.
Yeah, it was good to. I think at first he was a bit skeptical of us, and he was like, these are dubs and these are sound. So
yeah, exactly.
Got over the line. What about you, Basmon?
Yeah, we literally did that interview just before lockdown, really, wasn't it? Like, it was just like we were like going up, and then it was like lockdown. Yeah. So like, but then like we got loads of people on the show online, especially the two lads here. My favorite one, like I think it was just being so hungover interviewing Steve Wonderboy Thompson as well, like just live, and we were like, what are we doing? Shouldn't be here, lads. But yeah, it's good crack. For like, obviously people tuning in now love the show or love MMA or just love the two lads that are on the show, bar us, Ross. But if you're new to the show, make sure to like and subscribe, because we're going to get into things right now. Ross, UFC Fight Island is back this weekend. How excited are you?
I was more excited when Kazmat and Leon was there, but I'm actually just excited for 2021 to kick off, how the fight's going. And 2021 is going to kick off the same way 2020 did. UFC have rolled out the red carpet. They brought their biggest star. They brought their cash cow. They brought the McGregor show. And it is going to be a proper 2021. I am very, very excited for Fight Island. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I can't wait for it, because as you mentioned, last year they kicked off from McGregor as well, cash star. It's just, whenever he fights, anyone who's involved in MMA watches the fight. They always tune in. Yeah. But then also, the fact that we've got 3 cards coming back now, that's a nice thing as well. We've got regular MMA action where it's not going to be kind of a card, then a few weeks off. We've got 3 cards to get ourselves into, and I'm just looking forward to that. And I think there's some standout fighters coming up as well on these cards. You've got some of the best lads. We were talking earlier about Munir Lazez fighting on the card. Mason Jones making his debut. So yes, we have McGregor, but obviously we have so many talents as well that we can watch, and I can't wait to see him fight.
Jake, can I just ask you a question as well? Obviously, for people if they didn't notice, Jake, he's living in England. Jake, what's the perception of Conor McGregor in England?
So it's a weird one. If people don't like MMA, it's definitely the moment you mention MMA or UFC. Oh, is that the one that Conor McGregor does? So he is definitely a worldwide star here as well. Like, everyone knows him. In terms of his perception, I would say he is loved in the UK. I don't know many people who don't rave about McGregor. I know people who were kind of quite involved in the sport and then have their things to say about him, especially with some of the stuff that he's done in the past. But overall, I would still say he is the figurehead of MMA here. He's definitely, yes, he's had his controversial moments, but he's not remembered for that in the UK. Definitely not. He's definitely the UFC star.
He is the UFC star, that's right, yeah.
And Donna, come on, UFC, Fight Island, we're back, baby. Tell us what you think.
I can't wait. I've missed fights so much over Christmas. You know, obviously we got a little bit of something if you're into boxing with the Ryan Garcia fight on January 2nd. But in terms of MMA, yeah, we've been missing it, and I can't wait. I'm disappointed that our boy Dean Barry didn't get to make the trip over, but you know, he'll be back, and yeah, I'm very excited for Mason Jones to fight, and of course to see the great Conor McGregor back, and please God, actually starting that season that was supposed to start last January against Cowboy Strong.
Yeah. Touching on that, like, obviously last year everyone was buzzing Conor was back, and then he's doing a season. Like, Ross, do you think Conor is actually back for a season? Because Dana just did an interview there and he said that the title isn't going to be on the line, even if Khabib hands it over. But do you think Conor is going to be here for a season, or do you think it's just a bit of a payday? Because obviously, as Dunnan well knows, Jake Paul's been calling him out, all this sort of stuff in the background. Like, this stuff's just not going away.
I think Conor's problem for this year will be finding the right B side. Obviously, Conor's always going to be the A side, and the Dustin Poirier rematch is sort of a perfect fit for him to come back into the MMA fold. A lot of riding on Dana White's conversations with Khabib this week. If he can talk Khabib into a Conor 2 rematch, well, like, that's your absolute biggest pay-per-view in UFC history, guaranteed. especially if it happens during lockdown. Like, people will have nothing else to do and they'll have to buy the pay-per-view. In terms of a third fight from this year, I mean, I don't know if Justin Gaethje or Charles Oliveira, I know they're a rumored fight, if the winner of that does much for him. Does going up to 170 and fighting for the welterweight belt, is that an option for him? Yeah, but I don't know if Usman wins that fight with Gilbert Burns. I don't know if that's the best stylistic fight for him. What do the boys think, Jake? We'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go the opposite end of the scale. I think this might be a one-hit wonder for the year. Only because, as you said, it's riding on what happens this week. I think if the Khabib rematch can be made, then I think we'll definitely see him back. And I think it will be, as you said, the biggest fight in MMA history. And pay-per-view buys will just shoot through the roof. But I don't think that is going to be the next fight. I think Khabib, I know there's talk about a GSP fight, which I think could be a potential as well. I think it depends on Khabib's morality. Does he go for the money, which is definitely going to be the McGregor fight? That's going to be the fight that's going to get him millions. Or, as I said, the GSP settles kind of the GOAT debate. So for me, then, I don't think the Khabib fight will be made this year. I could be wrong with that. And that's why I genuinely think that McGregor's probably going to do this fight with Poirier. We might see him fight at the end of the year, but I don't think it's going to be the year where we see 3 or 4 fights or basically McGregor running the entire scene again. I think we might get this fight out of him and then maybe promotion for a next fight, or as you said, maybe even go across to boxing again.
Don't know, what about you? That's actually very interesting, two sort of different opinions.
Yeah, look, it would be great if he did a season. Obviously, as fans, we're just dying to see it. As media members, as fans, as everything, as people who talk about the sport, the more Conor McGregor, the better. What I actually think is going to happen is I'd imagine he'll leave it off pretty much where he left off last year. He would have fought, I think, Justin Gaethje if COVID never happened, and he was also very seriously in talks to fight Manny Pacquiao in boxing. So I would imagine he might fight for. I think you're right. I think Khabib probably isn't going to come back. I can't imagine Khabib is going to fight at all. I can't imagine he's going to fight Conor, and I can't see him going up in weight and fighting GSP or in anything like that. He has never entertained the notion of going up in weight, even though he absolutely should. Size-wise, I think that he likes how life is at lightweight. I don't think he ever fancied Colby Covington too much. I don't think he ever fancied Kamaru Usman too much, or even Tyron Woodley before that. So I think Khabib is out of the question pretty much. It would be nice if Conor got to fight for a title next, and I suppose if he beats Poirier, he deserves it. And I would think maybe a boxing match over the summer, and then back towards the end of the year when everyone can travel to Vegas again, we see him fight for a world title in Vegas against maybe Justin Gaethje or whoever. Maybe Michael Chandler will be up there by then. God knows. But I think ideally we see him fight 3 times this year, once in the boxing ring.
Definitely, especially when fans are allowed in. Although fans are allowed next week, but
yeah,
the tickets are going to be very expensive. Ross, like the lads were sort of touching on it there. Conor, we're looking at what he does next. Like, obviously, Jake doesn't think there's going to be a season. You think there is. Done it as two fights maybe, but not one of us have brought up the possibility of Conor losing this fight. What happens if Conor loses this fight, Ross?
I just don't see it coming to fruition that he does lose it. I actually rewatched the UFC 178, which was an absolute stacked card, by the way. Like Cowboy versus Alvarez on that card as well. And I think actually Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson topped that headline that card against Chris Carriasso, I think it was, which is like an absolute wild card for him to be.
Was that not Jones Cormier? No.
I think it was meant to be, but that got cancelled. If I'm not correct, I think that got pushed to UFC 181, maybe. I'm sure Jake probably knows it off the top of his head. Yeah, it was an absolute wild card. McGregor actually very much utilised spinning back kicks in that fight. I think he threw 3 spinning back kicks. He threw a check hook kick off the start. And I just think Conor McGregor is so fast out of the traps that, and his range distance is actually next level. Like, it really, really is when you really intimately watch it. I've seen so many people try and break him down. I mean, a big thing that you're probably gonna see Poirier try and do is, like, kick that lead leg of his with a few leg kicks. But look, many people have tried before, and it's not enough. It's not going to be able to get the job done. The only way you can beat Conor McGregor is if you have a Khabib-esque style that you can absolutely drag him down to the ground, or if you're an Nate Diaz and you're an absolute zombie. We've seen Poirier be knocked out before, and I think we're going to see it again.
Yeah, but okay, well, let's play devil's advocate here. Like, as Bisping would say, devil's avocado. If like who knows? Remember Sugar Sean O'Malley lost to Chito Vera. His leg was ruined. Like, what happens if something like that happens? He rolls his ankle. Like, what do you think then?
Well, I think
let's let on that he loses, right?
But I think if he does lose, it obviously depends on how he loses as well. Obviously the trilogy could be there, Poirier versus McGregor.
If he loses, sorry to interrupt you.
Not for it.
Sorry to interrupt, but if he loses, it's almost better for everyone because he'll be pissed off. He'll be wanting that rematch immediately, and he'll be back in there in April or May looking for that rematch in the trilogy with Dustin Poirier. So yeah, I think it's great for everyone if Conor loses.
Except for Conor McGregor, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What about you, Jake? If Conor loses?
So I'm sticking with Ross in the sense that I don't think Conor is going to lose it. I think if he does...
Lads, I love the way I'm trying to play both sides here, and you're just like not having it. You're like, he's not losing. I know, I don't think he's going to lose either, but it's just like,
It's a hard one. I think Poirier is definitely like a worthy opponent. I think that's something we need to consider. Is that like Poirier, since their first fight, has come on massively. And the style that Poirier brings is incredible. I think it depends on what McGregor turns up on the night. So if it's that motivated McGregor, you said earlier with like Khabib is the best at wrestling, and I think McGregor's probably up there with the striking as well. With that, he's a different animal. So if he comes up in the best form, then I don't think Poirier does stand a chance. But if he comes up and is a little bit gassed out or hasn't been focusing fully on the camp, then I think he could have a hard night against Poirier. And obviously, in my opinion, the worst case scenario is going to be, say, McGregor getting knocked out. If you see McGregor get knocked out cold, that's not going to do a lot good for, especially what people kind of expect from McGregor. I said if it's a 5-round brawl, maybe it's different because then it maybe loses by decision, and then that kind of rematch does come in fruition. You think, yeah, that all makes sense. If it's first round knockout, it's just going to be an awful night for him. But as I said, I'm completely other end of the spectrum. I think that McGregor, as I said, if he goes in and focuses McGregor, I think he does just exemplify Poirier's abilities and is just better at all of them. And that's no disrespect to Poirier. I think he's phenomenal. But I do think, especially McGregor striking, he is a different animal.
Yeah, let's not lie as well. Like if McGregor wins, like it does better views for everyone as well. So like, I mean, he's feeding everyone, put it that way. But don't know, like looking at Conor's preparation in the build up to this, the way he just looks like a caged animal. Like what sort of Conor are you expecting to come in here? Are you expecting like a sort of a brash Conor, like on the mic saying like I sparked you once, I'll spark you again or something? Or do you think he's just going to be very humble?
I would imagine it'll be the same Conor that we saw against Cowboy, a respectful guy, someone who understands that Dustin has been in there a whole lot more than he has pretty much since Conor won the title, in 2016. Like we've seen him in the cage twice. We've seen him in the boxing ring once. Dustin's been in there a whole lot more than that. So I would imagine that Conor will come in with the requisite level of respect, and that is not good for Dustin Poirier. What Dustin Poirier would need is a brash, overconfident Conor, in my opinion.
Ross, what are your thoughts on that? We haven't touched on this before.
What's called? I think the only time Conor McGregor won't respect Poirier is in the cage when he's putting him to sleep. I think that's the only time he won't have respect for him. And like, I feel like I've gone like full Conor McGregor fanboy the last week, but when you actually go back and look at the body work Conor McGregor has put together, like if you like, I love when people have a common denominator, and I've seen the Eddie Alvarez that Conor McGregor fought and the Eddie Alvarez that Dustin Poirier fought, because I feel like Eddie Alvarez brings basically the same fight to every fight. You know what I mean? He brings the dog to the fight, and Poirier has that dog. McGregor has that smart. His fight IQ is so much higher. He picks and sees those shots, and I feel like Poirier is going to swing, miss, and really pay for it. And I just feel like McGregor's going to get it done in one. I really, really do. I think Poirier loves to brawl too much. He said he wants to make McGregor bleed. I think he's going to want to fight him in the phone booth. And if he's going to want to fight him in the phone booth, he's going to get caught with something, and he's going to go night-night. That's just the way I see it. I can't be convinced otherwise.
Jake, I was just watching Theo Vaughn's podcast with Dustin Poirier just to see what he was saying. And like, I couldn't help but feel a bit bad for Poirier, the way like everyone's sort of like, go on Conor. But Theo Von asked Poirier, does he want to kill McGregor? And he was like, no. But like, do you think like by him obviously not admitting that he wants to kill Conor, but do you think by saying that you can almost see like that maybe Poirier has sort of softened up a tiny bit?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to touch on it, but these guys are going to be respectful to each other. I think it's also because they can both easily get knocked out by each other. You can't go in there and talk so much trash and then get banged in a second. Like, if that happens, you lose a lot of your value. And obviously, McGregor being kind of the way he's made his name in the sport has been on this trash talk and everything he's done for the sport. I think if he goes in with that same attitude and then gets knocked out straight away, then he loses a lot of that stock value. So I think they're both going to go in respect. And I think that's why they're both not saying at this current stage, yeah, I'm going to kill them and I'm going to do this, because there is no need to. There's not that bad blood that we've kind of seen with Conor and Khabib. Yes, these two have fought each other before, but they're both high-level athletes and they're both champions in the sport. I don't think they need, at the moment, to go in with... A lot of the time, I think you see this trash talk happen when they want to feel like they need to try and sell the fight more. This fight doesn't need to be sold more and more and more. It's already one of the biggest fights of the year. And as I said, I think if you weigh that up with saying you're going to do something and then getting absolutely knocked out in a second, then it doesn't work. But then obviously McGregor recently has said that he's going to knock him out in under 60 seconds. That's what he's recently said, is just he's predicting that.
Cue the gone in 60 seconds memes.
Yeah.
And that's very possible. It's very, very possible that Conor goes in there and touches him one time and it's over. You know, that like people are not giving... I think that we never give enough respect to Conor because of how quickly he did everything. His CV is unbelievable. I've always said that the biggest black mark on his CV isn't any of the losses. It's that he fought Dennis Seaver when he did, because he probably could have just waited and fought Chad Mendes or Jose Aldo. But do you remember then everyone thought it was like a warm-up fight? Everyone thought, oh, they're giving him an easy fight. And since then, everyone has been calling him a hype job. If he had gone from Poirier to Mendes to Aldo, everyone would be saying, yeah, that's a great trajectory to a championship. Holloway, Poirier, Mendes, Aldo with Brandao in there as well. But we never give him the respect he deserves. He's one of the greatest strikers in the history of mixed martial arts. He's one of the best boxers in the world. I think there's a very, very good chance with those little gloves on that he goes in and knocks Poirier out with one punch.
Frost, 60 seconds, man. Is like what do you make of that, man?
Well, you're doing Cowboy in 60 seconds.
I know.
You know what I mean? So, like, again, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it. Look, if you ask me, I think it's probably in between the 2 and 3 minute mark. I think 60 seconds gives McGregor that range. He'll find it within 60 seconds. Once he does, you know what I mean? It's a bit, I'm going to take an adage of our mate Dean Barry, you know what I mean? Like, it's sniper time, you know what I mean? He's going to come in there and start picking those shots. And I'm like, I don't know. I'll never get sick of saying it. He picks his shots better than anyone. And in those lighter weight classes, he's an Francis Ngannou-esque power. You know what I mean? When he hits you, he hurts you.
Yeah, do you remember that they did some sort of test in the UFC PI, and like Conor was very close to Francis Ngannou's like striking power. Was that the kick though, or was that a punch?
I'm not too sure, to be honest.
I'm not too sure.
But at those lower weights, yeah, he hurts people as badly as Francis Ngannou does. That's true. Like he's obviously got a million times better technique than Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is you know, technically speaking, just an atrocious fighter in so many ways. I mean, he can't really box very well. We've seen everyone has him as a favorite against Stipe. We saw what happened when he fought Stipe. Nothing has changed since then. We have seen no indication that he is any better at any of the things he was bad at then. But Conor has a lot of this game figured out, and I think yeah, you're right when you say that he is Ngannou-esque in the way that he puts guys to sleep at 145 and 155.
Jeez, tell us how you really feel, doing it.
Yeah. Just even the way like Conor like sort of brought Cerrone into like a false sense of security. The way like he was real kind and nice beforehand, shaking hands, cordial. Then in the fight with the shoulders, like they came out and nobody was expecting that. I think this could have sort of been the same thing. That's why Connor's have to give money to Poirier's charity. Like he could go in and shake hands, and then to get the sort of. That's why he does like back kicks to the shins. Remember Conor does stuff like that. Like you don't know what he's going to come out with. But like before we sort of wrap up with the Conor and Poirier thing, because that's obviously on next week, and this weekend it is Max Holloway, Ross's best friend, against Calvin Kattar. Dana White. What do you make of what Dana White has done over the last year, making sure that like fight fans have had shows nearly every week? Like, lads, you know yourselves, we have content every week, bar at the beginning of this year, but now we have 3 fights in a week. It's almost too much. But I mean, like, what do you make of what Dana White has done over the last year? And also, he says in the next 2 years, it's going to get even bigger and bigger and bigger. And also, they just hit 25 million on Instagram. Ross, we start off with you, but.
Yeah, well, I think what Dana White's done is incredible. You know, he brought us Fight Island, which I love Fight Island. I love the concept of Fight Island. I hope Fight Island is at very least an annual thing when this is all said and done.
And that's why we're doing this show. Fight Island's back, baby.
Yeah, you better believe it. Look, I think he's actually done an incredible job. He's, managed to create absolute beauty and chaos. And, that's what part of fighting is all about.
Jake, also, who does Dana White remind you of? The way his hard work and his ethic, does he remind you of anyone? Bar me, obviously, but I mean, anyone else?
Yeah, Ross.
So Dana, for me, is a brand of his own. I think he's had his moments where people agree and disagree with him, but overall, this sport has its rise has been more rapid, I think, than any other thing we've seen in our lifetime. I think it's something like the Mail and the Sun, their second biggest online traffic behind football is MMA now. Like, MMA is a sport that people, I mean, I remember when I was first started getting into it, is that UFC thing, or they'll talk about like cage fighting or something like that. This sport has grown massively to one of the most respected sports in the world, and I think that is largely down to Dana. I think the way he's promoted the sport, even as you said over the last year, I love Bellator, but compare what Bellator have done over this last year to what the UFC have done. The UFC and Dana White are just standards above a lot of the sporting industry. And that's why I don't think you can compare him to anyone. I don't always agree with him. I don't agree with some stuff he does. However, I think as a promoter for the UFC, as the president, as someone, I think he is overlooked as someone who's one of the most crucial people in this sport. And I think if you put a list together on the most influential people, I think some people would miss him off when actually he should be
number one,
second, third. He should be up there. You can't deny that he has grown this sport incredibly.
Don't know, what about yourself?
What about the Irish DC?
Yeah, don't know, because if you think about it, if Dana had taken the money and left with the Fertitas, I don't think we'd have a Fight Island.
No, well, look, I think that when everything calms down in the world a little bit, I think the state of Nevada and as well as President Biden should honor Dana White for what he did back in April and May. I think that what he did for the world was such an incredible risk to take. They spent so much money, they lost so much money. It was definitely a loss leader for the UFC at the time. They could have done it on April 18th. They ended up doing it in the middle of May, and I think that no one else had the stones at the time to even try it. And I think that what he's done for the world is incredible. And I think that we can't, and I don't want to be like a bootlicker too much, but I think we can't thank Dana White enough for that in particular. And I think that people are so harsh on him. People just love to have problems with Dana White. I think the media people love to have their rivals, love to have their people they report on, and they, get all, they like to investigate what's really going on with Dana and stuff. But I think that overall he has been a net positive for the world of sport. And genuinely, in 2020, he was a net positive for the world, full stop.
I can't agree more with that. Yeah, just even the way he's like, Donna, you know exactly where I'm coming from here. The way he's like introduced the sort of the social media people, sort of like the Nelk boys, and then obviously like
Absolutely.
he knows what he's doing. With mentioned Jake Paul and Logan Paul, he's getting more and more eyes and views, and it's he's a genius. And it's sort of like, I feel like Bellator are a tiny bit being left behind. Now I know like we've all like met each other through Bellator, and like they look after us brilliantly. But I think some things they need to sort of, you can copy or imitate. It doesn't matter as long as your product gets better. That's something they should really take from the UFC, I think.
As they say, Basmo, there's levels to this game, and UFC have showed throughout the pandemic that they are levels in the streets ahead of the rest.
Yeah, they left the world and hit the moon. They're in their own world.
They did. Well, Basmo, we have a look at this week's card, and we'll have a look at a bit of Fight Island in general as a whole, will we?
Yeah, so if you are new to the show, make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to follow the lads as well. So this Saturday, UFC fight on. We are back. I also can't wait for all the embeddeds and the countdowns and everything. It's going to be great. But the first card of the week on Saturday is going to be Max Holloway taking on Calvin Kattar. Max Holloway, former featherweight champion. Ross, your best mate. We just put up a photograph today on our Instagram. Ross, tell the people how you met Max Holloway in Dublin, please.
So for those who don't know, I work for Jameson Whiskey over in Ireland, which can be controversial on the MMA podcasts.
Especially McGregor.
Don't at me. And he just came in one day with his buddy Chris, and he was doing a tour, and I just went up to him, and he didn't realize that I knew who he was, and I just said to him, "To be the best, you gotta beat the best, and the best is blessed." And if you don't know why I whispered it to him like real creepy, right? And he thought this was brilliant, right? So then brought him around, showed him the place. He was meant to be doing whiskey tasting, and you know what? He doesn't actually even drink whiskey. Got a photo with him, gave him a bottle of whiskey with his name on it. This was not staged, despite what everyone loves to think it was, or that like his PR team sent him here. He actually went to Crow Park and stuff like that. He was just in Ireland for a wedding. And he came and he met us, and then next thing you know, I was on like every MMA website ever known to man. Me and Max Holloway. But yeah, I love Max, and he's an absolute legend. The Max you see on TV is the Max you meet in real life. He's an absolute gent. As it goes for this weekend, though, I think he's in his toughest matchup in the division. Look, I believe he won the Volkanovski rematch. That's my thoughts on the fight. Some people say Volkanovski won. That's totally up to them. The first fight I thought was more closer to a Volkanovski win. But I actually think Calvin Kattar is the hardest fight in the division for Max Holloway. I think he also throws very high volume. I think he's got a bit more pop in a shot than Max Holloway does. And I think he potentially could put Max's lights out. But if I have to pick, which I do, I'm going to say Max Holloway wins this one by decision, probably 48-47 across the board. Max is a tough cookie to get out of there, but sometimes, how many wars you have in you, and Max had a good few wars.
That's a good point, Ross.
What about you, Jake? Who do you think?
Crazy you say Max had a good few wars, because how old is he? 20, 28, 29, something?
Yeah.
It's mental how many fights he's actually had. And I think I'm on a similar base to you there, is that I think this is probably his toughest fight in the division. I rave about Calvin. I think Calvin's striking is possibly the best in the featherweight division. I think his 1-2 boxing is incredible. And I think that's what gives Holloway a very hard fight here. And as you said, I think he does have more pop in his punches. But equally, we have seen Kattar take a loss before, to beat. And I think in times, it depends if Kattar realises kind of the volume that Holloway's going to actually bring into this fight. It's not just about the fact that, yes, your 1-2 boxing, your base striking is phenomenal. Holloway is known for his striking and his volume. And I think that's something that might catch Kattar off. Kattar's used to hitting someone and then getting hurt from it, and then being able to pick up his combinations and pick up the volume. Holloway, we've seen get hit before, and he just goes, bring it, and then he stands and bangs with them. So I think that we could see Kattar kind of get a little bit, just not necessarily rocked in the fight, but just distracted by that, and then potentially Holloway pick up and take the decision. But equally, I can see it completely going the other way around, and I can see a 50-45 going to Kattar because of how good his striking is. And when he strikes, he lands significant strikes each time. It's not just about throwing the punch out there or anything like that. His volume's high, but he lands clean each time as well. And I think if he can do that across the 5 rounds, I think we might see him outstrike one of the best strikers in the sport.
Do you think it could be closer? Do you think he'll try and put on performance like Poirier did in their second fight?
I think it's going to be really close. I don't think you can say that either of these guys are going to just absolutely demolish each other. But I think you do need to take from the Poirier fight as well, because I would suggest Kattar's slightly bigger than Holloway, not in terms of the actual height, but just his frame. Holloway is very tall, but when he came against Poirier, he struggled with that a lot. He struggled with just the strength, 155 pounds. So I think Kattar could easily make a 155 pound weight class if he wanted to. I just think he fights here because it's the optimal weight for him. So I think we might also see Holloway struggle with Kattar's actual power and his physicality throughout the fight. But as I said, I wouldn't be surprised either way with this fight if Holloway just absolutely proved why he's the former champion and just demolished him. As I said, I don't think it's going to be a knockout from either guy, but I think either way, it's just going to be a close fight. And I think it's going to be probably a fight of the year contender. I think these two will really stand a bang.
That's actually a great show for a fight of the year contender. If I'm correct here, Donna, I think the last time Max Holloway fought for in a non-title fight was December 10th, 2016, Holloway versus Pettis.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know all of the facts, but yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah, and then if you're looking at things now, like Holloway has obviously been a champion for so long. He's held the belt. He's like arguably the greatest featherweight to ever do it. And now he's fighting Calvin Kattar, someone that's sort of coming up, a hungry dog. Like, what Max Holloway are you expecting this weekend? Like, do you think it's going to be Max Holloway go back to the beginning or drawing board, or do you think he still has it in him to go and win the title again?
Look, if Max maintains the style that he did in the first 2 rounds against Volkanovski in their last fight for the whole 5 rounds against Calvin Kattar, I can't see how Calvin Kattar is going to get inside that and beat him. So I think that Max just needs to keep doing what Max has been doing. I also think that Max was a victim of the length of the way that MMA judging works, in that there's 5-minute rounds as opposed to maybe 10 2.5-minute rounds, or it's based on the judges only get 5 times to pick their scores, and so there's a very good chance that he actually won against Volkanovski. If things were a little bit different, and so I would just, if I were Holloway, I would not be too downhearted by the fact that I've lost those 2 title fights. I would pretty much keep doing what I'm doing, and I think as of right now, he would have enough to get past Calvin Kattar. But you're right, it's definitely going to be an incredible fight, and it is one of those ones that is really, really difficult to call.
And Basmo, just jump in there. UFC 206 against Pettis was for the interim featherweight title, just for Max Holloway. Pettis missed weight. I think that's why you thought maybe it was a non-title fight. But his last non-title fight, I think, was against Ricardo Lamas. Remember, for the last 10 seconds, Holloway beat the brakes off him and then pointed the octagon ground, and then they banged it out for the last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That was also the famous night of left hook Larry, I think. Jake Jones's mate, Michael Bisping, knocked out Luke Rockhold.
Just touching on that, just what Donna said as well there, Ross, right? So, like, we all sort of think that Max Holloway will get the job done, but, like, in his training camp now, coming off 2 losses against Volkanovski, like, what is he meant to do on the mic if and when he wins?
Well, I think he has very much the right to call out Volkanovski with a dominant win. Obviously, I think they're going to go the route of Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega next. But I was only sort of looking at the frames of the featherweight division. And, like, if you look at the beat, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, Calvin Kattar, if you just sort of take Volkanovski off because he's a bit of a short arse, if you look at those, it was like they could easily get in there and fight the 55ers and, like, be very, very competitive. You can fight your Gaethjes or your Poiriers, your Dan Hookers, your Michael Chandlers. Like, in terms of stature-wise, like, those guys could easily move up and fight at 155.
Did Volkanovski not fight at like 205 or something as well, though?
I think he weighed about 205 pounds when he was playing rugby league.
Oh, it's probably just rugby.
So he's a big dog, but I think Volkanovski is very, very good, but there's just something about him that is not that entertaining, not that captivating. I don't think the UFC are that mad and having him as a champ. I think they'd rather Max Holloway. I think he's a bit more of a moneymaker, a bit more of a draw for them.
Yeah, so you think Max Holloway will call out Volkanovski again?
I think so. I think he sees that as his belt, his division, and he'll want that fight back.
If I were Max, what I would do is, sorry to interrupt you, Baz, but what I would do if I were Max is I would get on that mic and I would say, Henry Cejudo, get back in here, 145, let's fight, and the winner can get Volkanovski then, right? Because, I think that Cejudo has not proven necessarily that he should be fighting for a 3rd world championship. But remember the old days in the UFC where if someone wanted to move up in weight and do the 2-weight thing, they would have to do at least 1 fight in the higher division. So yeah, if I were Holloway, I would say let's go old school, let's go fight Henry Cejudo, and that's what I think he should do, and sort of an out of left field call out for Holloway.
Jake, what about yourself? Do you think Max Holloway should stay in the featherweight division, or do you think he should probably try and move up a bit as well, 155?
I'm going to play devil's advocate again. I think he's going to be very mellow if he wins it. I think because he's come on off 2 losses to the title against Volkanovski, I don't think you can go in there and say, yeah, this is my division. Don't get me wrong, I think he's one of the featherweight goats. I think he's done so much for that division as well. But overall, I think he's going to probably win the fight and say, look, we're just going to have to see what's in the pipeline. And I think even a matchup with Chan Sung Young would be a good fight as well. Someone who's kind of in that picture.
Right, shout.
Near the top. And as I said, it's just not going for that bold, yes, I need the title now. I think potentially getting him another fight, and then there's no
What about Zabit, Jake?
I think the Zabit fight's good, but Zabit always has his issues with how many rounds he wants to have, and when he fights, he's quite picky with it. I think Holloway is the complete opposite to that. He'll fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, and I think Chan Sung Young suits that as well. So I think they could potentially make the Zabit fight, but if it's going to be way in the pipeline, I think Holloway is going to say, no, I'll take any fight that's available there. And as I said, I think the Korean Zombie could be a very good matchup. And obviously with Ortega hopefully getting the Volkanovski matchup, I think that would be very fitting on who deserves to get him next.
Here's a real devil's advocate for the three of you guys, right? Dustin Poirier gets injured over on Fight Island. Max Holloway's coming fresh off a win against Calvin Kattar.
Holy smokes.
Does Dana White
Oh,
put out the back signal, or the cupcake signal in this case, for Max Holloway? Or does he break up that co-main event and put Hooker or Chandler in there? Who gets the shot at the Golden Goose? Does he even go first?
Holloway and McGregor would always be a great fight. Look, that was a close fight the first time. I think obviously Conor had that very, very bad injury early on in that fight when they fought at 145. But these rematches, it's always easier to sell them when they're at a different weight. That's a very easy way to say, oh, things are going to be different this time. So yeah, that would be a lot of fun actually if Max were to, but he would probably have to win decisively. He would probably have to finish him, and I can't imagine he would want to fight again a week later if he had just gone 5 rounds with someone as much of a killer as Calvin Kattar. So that would be great fun though. That would be if I were him, yes, that would be a good idea. Now that you say it, Ross, for him to say, I'll do the stand-in, I'll stick around on Fight Island, and I'll be there in case something happens to your main event, or fuck it, to your co-main event. Why not?
Well, the Wine-Eye Warrior would step in. Jake, give me one name. Conor McGregor's opponent, Dustin Poirier, pulls out. Who's he fighting out with those three guys?
Holloway.
Basmo?
It obviously depends on timing and everything, but I'll for the crack, because like something always happens, I'll go Max Holloway as well. But
there we have it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the rest of the card, Basmo.
Yeah.
There. Give it a stream down there.
Let me just give me 2 cents there as well. I think Holloway is going to win. I think it's just going to go into the championship rounds, and I think he'll take over. But lads, I'm just going to mention a few fights in this card, and then but like Joe, what, each is going to pick one fight for people to look out for, right? Because obviously the majority of the people here were sort of like the McGregor Poirier update, fight on material, and Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. But like for instance, there are fights on the card. Carlos Condis taking on Matt Brown. Santiago Ponzinibbio is back in action against Li Jing Liang. Joaquin Buckley, Mr. 2020 highlight KO of the year, is fighting the card as well. Ross, our actual mate Puna Hill Soriano's on the card as well. We were in touch with him, wishing him the best of luck, and he told us to piss off. But like Tom Breeze is on the card as well. Jake, we'll start off with Jake, right? Tom Breeze is fighting Omari Akhmedov. Tom Breeze, your countryman. What you make of this fight? Tom Breeze looked unbelievable in the last fight.
Yeah, Tom's been one of them guys over the years who, because I think a lot of time he's pulled out of fights because of injuries. He has had a lot of troubles, but in terms of his actual ability, he is up there with the best. I think he's also been training with AJ, Anthony Joshua. I'm sure recently there's been photos of him and Joshua training together. Tom Breeze is one of them guys. I've been down to Renegade a few times. He literally walks around there as if like he's kind of like their coach. Everything about Tom Breeze is brilliant, apart from his record in the sense that he hasn't had enough fights for where he's at the moment. But I think a lot of people know the qualities there. I think it's a tough fight for him, but I do think he's got that power, that ability to knock the guy out. And as you said in his last fight, he looked awesome as well. I'm really hoping that if Tom can get these injury troubles sorted and basically get a spree going, I think we might see Tom Breeze as one of the top guys in, not this year, but a few years. They'll be saying, Tom Breeze will be a very well recognised name across the sport as someone who's a very tough fight for everyone.
Would you say by the end of 2022 we'll have cracked the top 15?
End of 2022, yeah.
Yeah.
I said 2021, I couldn't guarantee that just because I think there might be some troubles in there. But I think if he can get maybe 3 wins, I think what would he go to then? 15-2 or something?
Yeah. He's got a
Yeah.
good record.
Well, this fella Omari is ranked number 13 in the middleweight, it says.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, there you
Well,
go.
So he doesn't need another year if he wins.
Yeah. So if he gets that, he'll get into the rankings. But as I said, I still don't think we'll see him kind of push into that top 10, maybe top 5. I think it's going to be a few years, but I have no doubt that he has that quality and that talent that they just need him to kind of knuckle down a bit, and then I think he's going to be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Also, Mike Grundy was meant to be on this card as well, but he pulled out, didn't he? Oh, his teammate got COVID, unfortunately. But Donna, what fight are you looking forward to seeing as well, bar the main events?
Yep.
Yeah, so Donna, what fight are you looking forward to seeing most this weekend? Bar the main event, obviously.
Yeah, look, Joaquin Buckley is the kind of guy where, as of lately, if you're a casual, you see his name on the bill and the fight's on TV, you have to turn it on. Particularly at the moment when it's going to be on a little earlier for the Irish fans. Joaquin Buckley is certainly one to watch. Unfortunately, I think he's got his hands full in this one. Maybe this is the end of the Joaquin Buckley hype train, as it were, but for sure he's the kind of guy who just brings the eyeballs now. He's a guy who moves the needle as of the last couple of months.
Ross, you know what's something interesting here? Joaquin Buckley's fighting the Italian Alessio De Cicero. The UFC could be lining up a middleweight clash between Marvin Vettori and Alessio. UFC Italy sometime. That could be interesting.
Well, I think Alessio is going to have a bit to do to get up to Marvin's standard, but that is true. For me, I'm actually looking forward to Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes was probably first introduced to a lot of people when he lost by head kick on the Contender Series, but he went off and he fought in Brave, he fought in Bellator, he fought everywhere, and he came back with a bang. And he's a very dangerous man in the middleweight division, so I'm looking forward to seeing Phil Hawes. What about yourself, Basmo?
Well, I think we're lucky to leave. Obviously, it'd be a shout out for Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's back in action. That's something great to see. But lads, in the welterweight division, we can't end the show without talking about the two OGs, Carlos Condit, the natural born killer, taking on the immortal Matt Brown. No offense to people who follow Bellator, but this almost seems like a Bellator fight, doesn't it, Ross?
Yeah, well, it's two absolute veterans. These guys, they define violence, the two of them. That's all you're getting from the two of them. Someone's getting knocked out in this fight. I can feel it. My thing with Matt Brown was I think he could have been a UFC champion at one stage, except he just kept on getting shots to the liver, and you couldn't take a shot to the liver whatsoever. And I feel like Carlos Condit is going to give a body kick to the liver and get TKO. I remember Matt Brown must have been on a 6 or 7-0 streak in the welterweight division, which was unheard of at the time. And he was chomping at the bit for a number one contender fight. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like he ran into maybe Johnny Hendricks at the time. And that ended that. But Matt Brown is top to pops.
Well, there's definitely an element as well where this card is on. I think it's on some big TV network in the States. Is it ABC?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell that they have loaded it with fights that are going to make people flipping through the channels want to stick with the broadcast. There's you've got one of the fight of the year candidates like Jake was saying, and you've also got the chance that you could see a highlight reel knockout in either the co-main event or in Joaquin Buckley's fight. And certainly you can tell the UFC are looking to impress. They don't have many huge names that are going to move the needle in terms of getting the casual fans to show up, but the people who are flipping through channels are going to be entertained at some point during this card.
Cheers to that. Right, so lads, we've sort of gone over the whole card, the sort of stuff you need to look into. But overall, what do you rate the card, and how excited are you for Fight On return, Ross?
I would give it an 8 out of 10. Obviously, the main event's brilliant. It's got a good bit of name recognition throughout the card. I think maybe it was missing one other sort of almost title implication fight on the card. But for me, I'd give it an 8 out of 10, close to 8.5 out of 10. It's a good card.
Yeah, Jake?
One other thing I just want to add with the Matt Brown fight, I could be wrong with this. I'm pretty sure if he gets a knockout, doesn't he go to either tied most knockouts in the UFC or he gets the most knockouts in the UFC. I think he's on about 16 or 17. So that could be interesting. History made there.
There we go.
But for the card itself, I think it's a nice introductory card to the year. I would probably say about a 6 out of 10. I think that there are elements to fight to the fight night that could be better. But I mean, I think that main event, as I said, could be a fight of the year contender. So it's definitely up there with. It's got potential to be a good card, but I think there's a lot of the card as well that you don't. If someone wins, what happens next? And I think sometimes you have to look at a card and say, right, that fight brings this fight next. And I think a lot of this card doesn't necessarily have that. It's got a lot of names that you might not necessarily know. But you can't fault the UFC for that because we've got 3 cards in the week.
The co-main event brings you to the retirement home, Jake, if you're looking.
Otherwise known as Bellator.
Right, do you want to give us a quick mark out of 10 there?
I agree with that with Jake, 6.5.
There we go.
Right, for the excitement, I'll just say 7. I'm just looking forward to it. Who do you think is going to win that fight, by the way? Because that's a very interesting matchup.
I'm going to say Conor. Give us one word as there, Jake.
Matt Brown.
Do you want
to? Condit.
Yeah, I'll go Condit as well, just to go against Jake, you know.
Right, guys, just before we finish up, I have some yes or no questions for us to finish off.
Yes.
I'll direct them. Baz, I'll come to you first, then you, Jake, and then yourself, Donna.
Yep.
Yes or no, will Nick Diaz fight in 2021 in the UFC?
Well, if the rumors are correct coming from his team, I'll say yes.
Jake?
No.
Donna?
No.
Okay, will Nate Diaz fight in the UFC in 2021? Basmo?
I'll go yes.
Jake?
Yeah.
Donna? Oh gosh, that's a really, really tough question.
But it's yes or no, Donna. It's
leading
yes or no.
towards no. It's no. Yeah, it's no.
Okay, will Henry Cejudo fight in the UFC in 2021?
I'll go yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Will Ryan Garcia be in his corner, Donna?
No.
Will Jake Paul be in his corner?
Will Khabib fight in the UFC in 2021?
Who?
Khabib.
No.
Jake?
No.
Donna?
Yes.
And then I have 2 more. Will Kevin Holland fight for the UFC middleweight title in 2021?
Interim. Yes.
No.
Donna?
Yes.
And will Kazmat Chimaev fight for UFC gold in 2021?
Yes.
Yes.
Under no circumstances.
Well,
there we go.
All right, lads.
Wow.
Just before we wrap things up, if you just want to say again where people can check you out, so people can check you out. Jake, you go first, please.
Yeah, just online. I'm at Jake Jones MMA. That's where I post most of my stuff there. But follow the Ultimate MMA podcast as well. That's where me and Sean Gilly run that show, and it's just a weekly based podcast.
Brilliant. Donna?
Yeah, you can find me at Energized Show on pretty much every platform. Go to at Donna Corby on Instagram and Donna Corby _on Twitter, and check out MMA Island as well. That's where all my journalism goes these days.
Yeah, brilliant, lads. If as I said earlier, if you are new to the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, lads, I actually really enjoyed this format. Maybe we could do it again. Who knows? If Bellator Dublin's coming back, we can do something. Who knows? We'll talk about it. But
when Bellator Dublin comes back, I'll be in the studio with you guys for sure. Jake will be on Zoom, but I'll make sure to come join you guys out on the south side.
Wait, we're on the north side.
The north side?
Oh my god, uninvited. Yeah, what's your man Sean Giddy doing next week?
Okay, so make sure to like, share, subscribe, and as always,
stay
energized.
Stay energized.